Now, here on Breakfast last month, we shared the story of Frankie Jules Huff. You remember she was killed along with her unborn baby when her car was hit at 92 miles an hour while stationary on the hard shoulder.
Despite new laws being introduced last year that allow life sentences to be given to the worst offenders of dangerous driving, Adil Iqbal was jailed for 12 years in July.
Well, Frankie's partner, Calvin, is now supporting a campaign calling for an end to lenient sentences. And he's been to meet some other families who've also lost loved ones due to reckless driving. Jane McCubbin has the story.
Oh, she was stunning. She didn't know it. You know, she could go to Sainsbury's and she would make a friend.
Paul knew the whole of Home Alone off by heart. Hey baby, I miss you too.
We want to tell you about 6 lives and 6 deaths, and the families who believe they have been failed by the justice system.
They are murderers. They are murderers. No matter what way you look at it, they are murderers.
Your entire family unit just not there anymore.
What does it take to get a life sentence?
We did a little selfie, and that's the last picture we've got together, yeah.
On Christmas Eve 2021, Lily Clack accepted a lift home from a friend of a friend. She had no idea he'd been drinking and had previous drink driving convictions.
They all begged, they all pleaded with Charlie Hilton to stop that car, and Lily begged to get out that car. Lily begged for him to stop and let her out. The speeds of 120 miles an hour, hitting curbs, hitting sleeping policemen. When he hit the tree at roughly about 90 miles an hour, the car turned over. That's when I think he broke her neck.
Lily's killer was sentenced to 14 years in prison, the maximum sentence a killer driver could get at that time. But it was deducted to 10 years after a guilty plea. And within 5 years of coming out, he'll get his licence back.
I can't even tell you how that felt to hear that this was the 4th time this person was standing in front of a judge for drink driving. And on this occasion, he had killed somebody.
By the time he's 34, he will be behind the wheel of a car again.
This is an issue we've looked at before on Breakfast with Calvin Buckley. He lost his girlfriend and unborn child to a killer driver in May, almost a year after judges were given greater powers to impose life sentences for road crimes. But today, as the Ministry of Justice confirms those powers have yet to be used, he's meeting other bereaved families who all want that to change.
He got no seatbelt on, twice the drink limit, I think it was 4 times the cocaine limit. Twice the speed limit, and on his phone as well.
He mounted the pavement?
Yeah, mounted the pavement.
6-year-old Charlotte was killed as she walked to the shops with her dad.
And he was sentenced to how long?
6 years, 4 months.
So he'll be out in
A couple of years.
2.5 years. Which is, yeah, it's nowhere near long enough.
This is Jade Mace, her mum Lisa and Lisa's husband Paul Carter.
The guy was on 3 different types of drugs, one being crystal meth, being 15 times over the limit. 15 times over the limit. He was overtaken, so he was on the wrong side of the road. He was travelling at 96 miles per hour in a 60 mile per hour zone.
What sentence did he get?
Got 10.5 years. Could be out in 7, 2.3 years per person. It's just not enough.
And this is Frankie.
I think at one point he was doing 129 miles an hour. Just before he'd hit Frankie's car, he was filming it while he was driving these speeds, holding the steering wheel with one hand and his mobile phone in the other, undertaking people, tailgating, aggressive driving, causing panic.
And yet he didn't get a maximum sentence.
No.
Independent judges consider a range of guidelines when sentencing, things like whether the driver was drunk, if they'd used their mobile phone or were being chased by police. And anyone can ask the Attorney General's office to review a sentence if they think it's too lenient and should be reconsidered by the Court of Appeal.
8, 7.
This was filmed just before Frankie died, a party to reveal she and Calvin were expecting a daughter, Neve. Calvin has been granted an appeal. it will be heard on the very day Neve was due to be born. Everyone else in this room were refused an appeal. They were told the sentences handed down were not unduly lenient. The charity RoadPeace is calling for greater use of the new powers open to the judiciary and an end to what they believe are unduly lenient sentences and much wider use of lifetime driving bans.
You don't think anybody should get their licence back?
Never, never.
After taking a life?
Never, ever should you be allowed to drive again. Driving's a privilege. Driving's a privilege, whether it's to take our children to school, whether it's to go off to work. That privilege should be taken away the minute you kill our loved ones. And that privilege should never be given back to you, because that's a small price to pay for the life you've just taken.
I've noticed your tattoo.
That's Lily's lips. Yeah, I can kiss her when I want to kiss her. That's all I've got left of my little girl, because somebody didn't want to stop. A coward didn't want to stop and let my baby out of a car.
That was Jane McCubbin's report, and we're joined now by Detective Chief Superintendent Andy Cox, who is the National Lead for Fatal Crash Investigations and also works closely with the charity RoadPeace. Morning to you, Andy. Thanks so much for coming in to talk about this hugely distressing stories there that we saw in Jane's report, but actually, tragically, those are not the only people who will be affected. In fact, today, many more families will hear bad news, won't they?
That's right. I mean, absolutely devastating, of course. But around about 5 people every single day on UK roads die. So that's every single day, 5 doors are knocked, families are left devastated. And unfortunately, I think we really need to look at the wider piece here. Too many people don't think road crashes will affect them. They don't. They're very complacent around it. There's a very selfish and complacent attitude to driving. And unfortunately, you know, the phrase accident is used, but, you know, the offence, you know, the crimes we've seen there, the devastation it's caused, that's a driver's choice to be selfish, to be dangerous, to be reckless. And we really need to change the language, and we really need to change as a society in terms of how we see road crime.
What do you mean? What language needs to change?
So, for example, the fact people say it's an accident would imply it's just one of those things, it was always going to happen, it was just bad luck. When actually, you know, the offences we're seeing there are a driver's choice to be dangerous, to be reckless, to be selfish, and to devastate lives. And I think we have to change that language to start to change how we perceive it, to make people realise really the purpose of any journey is to go from A to B safely. But too many people take that risk, they're prepared to touch their phone, to drive too fast, to have that drink, and to take that risk. And it has devastating consequences. And, you know, as I said, 5 people today will get a knock on their door.
God, that's such a brutal figure, isn't it? Those families frustrated that sentences aren't longer, that despite a change in the law, that nobody's yet been jailed for life for this. Is it frustrating for you as police officers as well?
Well, it is, of course, but I think, you know, taking a step back, we need to see how other crime is perceived. So, for example, I would use this example. So people that perhaps drive outrageously and really dangerously, maybe 150 miles an hour or more, and people do that. You know, they might do that at tea time today somewhere, and that happens routinely. The risk they take compared to, say, somebody carrying a knife. And I'm not condoning that, of course. Carrying a knife is very dangerous, but actually the way we perceive those crimes are very differently, and the way we sentence is very differently. But the risk and the devastation that those 2 individuals might cause, of course, arguably the 150-mile-an-hour driver is more dangerous and more reckless.
So almost we should be seeing a car as a weapon, potentially, like a knife?
I think we should see somebody that chooses to be dangerous or reckless. We should see the crime in that and the choice that they've made, rather than referring to it as an accident, as I've just said, or seeing it in some ways, oh, it's just a traffic offence. It's not. It's a road crime. It has devastating consequences and it kills. And we need to see people that commit that crime in the way that they deserve to be seen.
So you would say that needs to change, perception needs to change. What else needs to change?
Well,
Behaviour?
Yeah, totally. So I think, you know, how we challenge speeding drivers. Unfortunately, too many people see it as a bit of a badge of honour if they go to a speed awareness workshop. I think we really need to understand that, much in perhaps the same way we did for drink drive, where I think that's rightly seen as socially unacceptable. But I think speeding needs to move into that category as well. This is just one example, but, you know, so if you're in a car where perhaps you're the speeding driver or your family member is or a friend is, challenge that person, challenge yourself not to speed, because we've just seen the consequences it has and lifelong devastation for all those families. There's families up and down the country every single day have that devastation, and it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to accept it.
there'll be hundreds of thousands of people doing speed awareness courses, maybe for going a few miles, a couple of miles above the limit, who will say, hang on a minute, that's very different from the extremes that we're just hearing about. But you would say it's a continuum. We need to see the whole picture. I do. I think it's a way of seeing why the law is the law, and it's there for a reason in this regard, and it's there to keep people safe. And we need to really change the way our culture around driving. As I said, it's to go from A to B safely, to keep everybody safe. I mean, that goes on to things like, one thing I would change, for example, is the exceptional hardship claim that defendants can make. So that is where you've accrued 12 points, you plead to the court that you are going to suffer hardship if you lose your licence. Well, the hardship for me is with the crash victims, and actually everybody knows you have to be safe and sensible on the road. When we pass our test, we know we have to meet standards, we know we have to stay lawful. But if you get 12 points, you know you should lose your licence, and the fact that some people don't, I mean, about 1 in 5 don't. That should be, it's not exceptional, is it? 1 in 5. We should remove that option. And actually, there are people that claim exceptional hardship that then go on, whilst they would have otherwise been suspended and disqualified from driving, to kill in a road crash. So it has devastating consequences. And I think exceptional hardship is one example of the system not quite working and being not on the side of victims, not on the side of lawful, safe and sensible people.
Fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much, Detective Chief Superintendent Andy Cox from the Metropolitan Police. Thank you.